Hello students, welcome to this English class. Let us resume the prose text for you, the portrait of a lady by Khushwant Singh. You know that Khushwant Singh has very limpidly delineated the human relationship along with the Indian values and the cultural importance. In this text, a lot of writers have already delineated about their mothers, but few people have written about their grandmothers. And here is a man with us, Khushwant Singh, who has picked out the grandmother, whose contribution is quite considerable in his life. Yes, the students, I would like to tell you that Khushwant Singh presents the grandmother and the boy in the first unit of the text. The appearance, the looks, along with the grandfather's appearance and looks, have found a right place in this text. They belong to the elderly generation, they belong to the old generation. And here Khushwant Singh as a boy and his ideas and ideologies have been described here in this text in the first unit. The writer also hints at the school system in the ancient times of India. When we come to the unit 2 of the text, we come to know about the fact that the parents have come to the city, and after some days when they are properly settled there in the city, the grandmother and the grandson, they are sent for and they came to the city. And here Khushwant Singh makes a juxtaposition of the city life and the country life, the city schools and the country schools. The systems are altogether different, and all these things I have got a right place in his writing here. The portrait of a lady rightly describes in the unit 2 of the text how the family relationship changes. Here we find identities are lost, and there is a kind of a turning point in the relationship among the human beings. When you go to a village, you will find the relationship is something different, and when you come to a city, the relationship changes. The same man behaves differently in different situations, and the city life and the country life are juxtaposed here, and we find how the child goes to the school in the city. When he went to the school in the village, and the school was attached to the temple, and the grandmother used to go with the boy to the school because she would read the scriptures in the temple. This is what we find. The old woman, the grandmother had to accompany the boy to the school. But here the situation changes. Although they lived together, they shared one room. When they came to the city, they lived in one room, but the system became something different. He says, Khushwant Singh says that lifestyle has changed. When the boy went to school, the grandmother did not accompany him to the school, because if you go to a city, the schools are far away from residence, from the living place. Therefore, it was difficult on her part to accompany the boy. It is a very, because nobody went to school on foot. As the schools are away from residence, children have to go by bus. So, he went on a bus, and he went to an English school. When he went to the school in the village priest only taught the alphabet and the morning prayer. But when he went to the city, the child went to the English school, and the English school is something different. And in the unit 3 of the text, we find family relationship changes, identities are lost, and therefore, life takes a different turn. In the unit 2 of the 3 of the text, he says, although they shared the same room, grandmother did not accompany him to school, because the school was far away. He went to an English school on a bus. You know, in cities, school buses run carrying children from their homes, and buses are available. Therefore, there was no use of the grandmother going and accompanying the boy to school, and therefore, this was a turning point in the relationship between the boy and his grandmother. Kushan Singh is very much careful of the things, the ideas that have been described here, and in the unit 3 of the text, he goes on a bus to the school, and the school was far away, and that marked a turning point in the relationship between these two characters, the child and the grandmother. The grandmother was very upset when the child came back from school. When the boy came back from school, the old woman asked the boy what he learnt there at school. She wanted to know, she was quite curious. She wanted to know what the boy learnt at school. And the boy said, English words, which the lady did not know. She was not so highly educated, the old lady. She only knew the vernaculars. She knew the basics of language. She knew the alphabet, that is all. She knew nothing more than that. But here she knew nothing about the English words either, and the boy told many things about the English words which she did not know. He told that about the science, Western science, the law of gravitation, Western science, Archimedes' principle, how a body floats on water, the gravitational pull of the earth, the law of gravitation. These are the things that the lady did not know. She was upset because she could not help the boy with the studies. It is because she knew nothing about these things, but the boy studied these things, because these things were being studied in the city schools. That happened. The lady accepted all these things silently. She did not protest anything at all. She accepted these things very silently. She did not react at all. And here the boy one day announced that the boy one day announced that they were going to be given music lessons. Music lessons. You know, music lessons are something which the grandmother did not approve of. She never liked that her grandson should learn music, because music had lewd associations. Music had lewd associations. Lewd means vulgar. Lewd means vulgar. So, music had lewd associations. Children of a gentleman's family did not take any music lessons in those days. In those days, music was not accepted by the gentleman's family. Gentleman's family never learnt any music at all, because it had some lewd associations. It was the monopoly of the harlots and beggars. Monopoly. Monopoly means it is the area which is occupied by a particular group of people or by a particular individual, not by all. Only so it was the monopoly of whom? Monopoly of harlots. Harlots means prostitutes. It was the monopoly of the prostitutes, of the harlots and beggars. Harlots did not have any respect in society. Prostitutes did not have any respect in society. Such people can take music lessons, but when she came to know, as it was announced by the boy, that it was the monopoly of the harlots, it is the monopoly of the prostitutes and beggars, but the child said that the music lesson would be given to them and they would take music lessons, and therefore, it was a very painful thing for the lady, because she believed in the values, she believed in the cultural values. It was also a culture of Indian system, culture of India, that music did not attract the gentleman's family. Gentleman's family never went for taking music lessons, and therefore, it was a very painful thing for the lady who was upset, because her grandson was going to take music lessons. And the boy and the grandmother were very unhappy, because the boy did not see that his grandmother was not happy with the kind of thing that she was going to take, and the grandmother was very unhappy, because her grandson was going to take something which she did not like. The grandmother believed in the older values, the value system of India. The values are important. She believed in God, she believed in prayer, she did not believe in the system of things which she did not like. The system in Indian culture, and you see, she did not like the system of education that should be there in India, in which there would be no place for scriptures and God. And this is the thing that we find here. And the grandmother was very upset in this regard. Yes, students, Khushwant Singh is very careful of the family life in India, and he tries to give you the relationship that exists between the boy and his grandmother. The grandmother belongs to the early generation, and she is old values personified, and how old things are very important and old things are always beautiful, and the human relationship undergoes a sea change here, and the lady, old lady who comes here to the city, she had to accept things very silently, and the kind of school that was there in the village or in the country, that was something different, and the children read there in a different mood. But when the boy comes over to the city, he goes to an English school which was far away from the home. He had to the school system also changes, the learning pattern changes. He no longer carries any slate to the school, he never takes any reed pen to the school, he never carries any ink pot to the school, see, he never takes any satchel to the school, because the old lady had to keep all the writing materials in one bundle, and the boy was carrying this to the village school. But when he came to the school in the city, the scene changed altogether, and the boy went on a verse. He went to read in an English school, he learnt English words, he learnt Western science, Archimedes' principle, law of gravitation and all that. But the old woman was not happy with the kind of education that was there in the English school, because there was nothing about God, there was nothing about the scriptures. The children were only given knowledge of science, knowledge of English words, everything Western, nothing Indian, nothing about God, nothing about moral education. And when moral education is not given to the children can't be good persons in future, and therefore, the lady was not happy with the kind of education that was there in the English schools. And when her own grandson went to the English school, she was not happy with that. And you see, dear students, the lady was very much upset when she came to know about the fact that her grandson was going to take music lessons, and as music lessons were to be taken by they were not taken by the children of the gentlemen's families, and because it was music had a lewd, vulgar associations, and the prostitutes, the harlots and beggars had to take music lessons, and she did not approve of it, but she did not react. She was unhappy, she was distressed, she was upset, and that was the thing that we find here in this part of the text. And let us now drill with certain words. You see, the writer has made use of a word hung, H-U-N-G. Hung is You see, it is the root word is hang. Past tense is another is hang. You see, hang, hung, hung. Here means the photograph was hung. You cannot say hanged, because it is just the hanging something against the wall. And here hang means to put somebody to death by throttling one's throat, by suffocating somebody, by putting him to the scaffold. And here hang, hanged, past tense is hanged. He was hanged because the court ordered him to be hanged. He has to be killed, and here that is called hanged. And you cannot say that the portrait of the grandfather hanged. We have to say it hung, and it hung over the mantelpiece in the drawing room. So, we can mix up these things. Hang, root word is hang, but when it is just like a photograph or a portrait hanging against the wall, we have to say it is hung. We cannot say hanged. Hanged means to kill somebody, that was the due to the order given by a court, and he was hanged. And therefore, the derive nouns from the following words. We have some words in the text, some adjectives in the text, and let us now see, find out the noun forms of these words. I give you some adjectives. I here give you some adjectives and find out the nouns of these words. Pretty, pretty is adjective, and what would be the noun form of this word? The noun form of this word is prettiness. You see, pretty, y is here. When we make it a noun, ness is added to it and y changes into I. We cannot say pretty then ness, y changes into I. And long, the noun form is length, long, length. Young, youth. Then absurd, absurdity. You see, these are the nouns, these are the adjectives that we find in the text, and pretty is the adjective and prettiness is the noun, long is the adjective and length is the noun, young is the adjective and youth is the noun, absurd is the adjective and absurdity is the noun. And these are the things that we find in the text, and these words are very important for you to learn, to increase your vocabulary. That is very important for you. Let us resume the vocabulary part of this text, the portrait of a lady by Khushwant Singh. You know, the deriving words is a very interesting thing. We have to know the words, how the words are derived from the root. We derive nouns from adjectives, we can derive adjectives from nouns, we can derive verbs from nouns, we can also derive nouns from verbs. So, we can derive different things from different roots, and it sometimes so happens that words are given to you and you have to do with the words. Sometimes you can write the antonyms of words, sometimes you have to derive the things from the the nouns from adjectives, etc. And let us now derive verbs from some words. I here give you some words and let us see how we can derive verbs from these words. The first word I would like to give you here is had. Hard is adjective. Hard can be used as an adverb also. This is very hard to believe. Hard means difficult, and here it is used as an adjective. Inflate it hard. Don't inflate it hard. Don't inflate the tube hard. And here hard is used as an adverb. And here hard is adjective, for example. And when we derive a noun from a verb from this word, the verb is harden. The verb from of hard is harden. Let us take another word. Belief. Belief is a noun. Let us now derive its verb form. The verb is believe. Belief, the verb is believe. So, this is the noun, this is the verb. Another says the portrait, and let us see, portrait is a noun, and when we derive verb form from this word, the verb is portray. Portrait, noun form, and its verb form is portray. We have another word, breath. Breath, and its verb form is we add e. When we add e, it becomes a verb. Breath, e is added, it becomes a verb form. Breathe. Breath is a noun, breath, the pronunciation. We say breath, not breathe. When it is verb, it is pronounced breathe. Breath, breathe. Hard, harden. Belief, believe. Portrait, portray. Breath, breathe. So, this is how we can derive words from, we can derive verbs from these words. Now, again we can derive adjectives from certain words. I am now going to give you some words from the text, and let us derive adjectives from these words. Deriving adjectives is what is an adjective? An adjective is a part of speech which describes a noun. An adjective describes a noun, it modifies a noun, it qualifies a noun. So, that means an adjective has two kinds of use. an adjective can be used either attributively or predicatively. So, what is an attributive use of adjective? An adjective, when an adjective goes just before the noun, it modifies or describes. It is the attributive use of adjective. Let us now take some sentences in which an adjective can be used attributively. He is a good man, and in this sentence he is a good man. Man is the noun and good goes before man, and it qualifies or modifies or describes the word man. Therefore, it is called the attributive use of adjective. Interesting story, this is an interesting story, and story is a noun and interesting goes before it, and therefore, here interesting is an adjective and it has attributive function. It is used before the noun, therefore, it is used attributively. It describes the attribute, the quality of the noun. Therefore, it is called attributive use of adjective. Another use of adjective is predicative. An adjective can be used predicatively because when it appears in the predicate part just after the verb, when it is used after the verb, it is called the predicative use of adjective. And the predicative use of adjective, the same word can be used attributively and predicatively. You see, he is a good man, here good man, it is used before man, therefore, it is attributive. The man is good, and here it is used in the predicate part and after the verb, the man is good, and here good is predicative. This is an interesting story, and here interesting is the adjective that goes before the story, therefore, it is called attributive use. The story is interesting, and here interesting is adjective, and it is not used before the noun, it is used after the verb in the predicate part, therefore, it is called predicative use of adjective. So, attributive use and predicative use of adjective, and these two kinds of uses are very much important, and a student has to learn these things, and he has to experiment how a particular adjective can be used both attributively and predicatively, that can increase the standard of a student in grammar and vocabulary. Dear students, welcome to this English class. We shall deal with certain grammatical devices and to increase the vocabulary of a student. Vocabulary is very important for the language, because we are doing both language and literature. We are reading the story, we are also doing grammatical ideas. We have to study the vocabulary part also, and here the students now come to certain words. I told you that an adjective can be used attributively and predicatively. Attributive use of adjective and predicative use of adjective. An adjective is attributive when it goes before a noun, and it becomes predicative when it is used in the predicate part just after the verb. Another thing is that an adjective can also be used as the complement of a sentence. An adjective can be used as the complement of a sentence. What is a complement then? A complement of a sentence is one which is very essential, which is a very essential part to the sentence. it is essential, very essential part of the sentence, without which we can't, because without the complement the meaning of the sentence becomes it is not meaningful, it becomes of no use, the meaning is lost, and therefore, we have to take care of the attribute, I mean the adjectives that can be used as the complement of a sentence. It completes the meaning. You see how an adjective can be used as the complement of a sentence, and how it I mean it is very much important for the meaning of the sentence. You see, here is a sentence, I am the sky appears blue, and here blue is the, it is the adjective of color, blue is adjective, it is adjective of color, and the sky appears blue, and here this is the complement of the sentence, because if you remove this word, for example, the sky appears, what is the meaning of this word of this sentence? The sky appears, what is the meaning of this sentence? I think perhaps the meaning is lost, because something remains omitted. We have to write that in order to make the sentence meaningful, and here we have to write an adjective. The sky appears blue, the sky appears blank. You can write any word, any adjective here that is suitable to the construction, suitable to the situation. The sky appears blue, he looks innocent, and here he is subject, look is verb, and innocent is adjective, and here this is the complement of the sentence, this is the complement of the sentence, and this is the adjective. He looks innocent. If you say he looks, what is the meaning of that? It seems as if something is lost, you feel something is missing here, the meaning is missing, and therefore you have to say he looks innocent, he looks arrogant, he looks haughty, he looks, you have to write an adjective here, so that the sentence will be meaningful, and therefore this is called a complement. An adjective can be used as the complement of the sentence, and therefore adjective plays a very important role, and we have to derive some things. We can derive the adjectives from I am now writing some words, the adjective of these words constantly. If you derive the adjective form of this word, what would be the adjective form? You simply, it becomes adjective. Constantly was the adverb. When we write constant, ly is omitted, it becomes an adjective. Logic. If you derive an adjective from this word, it becomes logical. System, what would be the adjective of this word? System, because you are every day you come across such words like system, computer is a system, it is a system, body system, body is a system. So, system, and what is the adjective of this word? You have to write an it becomes adjective, systemic, another word is systematic, and love. Love is a noun. If you derive an adjective from this word, what would be the word here? Adjective. Lovable. Understand, understandable. Love, lovable. So, we use able with certain words to make them adjectives, and we can derive adjectives from this like this, and deriving adjective is also very important in this context. Yes, dear students, we can derive nouns from adjectives, adjectives can be derived from nouns, verbs can be derived from nouns and adjectives, and vice versa. So, this is very important to see how different nouns and verbs and adjectives can be derived from different situations of the words. And let us now discuss certain questions which we have in unit that we have already done. Now, come to the unit 1 of the text, in which we have some questions which need to be answered, and how to write the answers of the questions which sometimes come in the examinations. Let us see the first question and how we can answer this question. Why was it hard for the author to believe that his grandmother was once young and pretty? Why was it hard for the author to believe that his grandmother was once young and pretty? You see, the writer Kushan Singh told you about the grandmother, described about the physical appearance of the grandmother, and how he had a kind of relationship with the grandmother when he was in the village. And when the physical description, I mean the appearance is described by the writer, he says the grandmother, people said that she was young and pretty. People said that she was young and pretty, but it was very hard to believe. Why was it hard to believe? Because grandmother looked the same for 20 years. You know, when you might have seen old men and women who look the same for 20 to 30 years. The son sees that the ladies or the man or the woman looks very old, and the grandson also sees the same thing. And sometimes some old people look the same, and she remained the same in the same age for 20 years, and the boy saw his grandmother in the same age, she looked the same for 20 years. This is the reason for which it was very difficult on his part to believe that grandmother was once young and pretty, because being young and pretty was something different, and he never saw the grandmother young. He never saw the grandmother pretty, because her face was the criss-cross of wrinkles. Her face was wrinkled. Therefore, it was hard to believe that she was once young and pretty. If you come to another question in the text, how did the grandfather appear in his portrait? How did the grandfather appear in his portrait? How? You know, Kushan Singh describes that the portrait hung over the mantelpiece in the drawing room. But how did the grandfather appear in his portrait? He looked 100 years old. He had a big turban. He had loose fitting clothes, and he looked 100 years old, as if he was 100 years old. This was that he saw in the. So, the next question for us is that what sort of a person did he look in his portrait? What sort of person he looked in his portrait? He also says very interestingly, he writes very interestingly about his grandfather. his grandfather, he looked 100 years old, but another thing, what sort of person he looked? He says that the grandfather looked such a man that as if he had no children or a wife. He cracked a joke. When he says like this, as if he had no children and a wife. How is it? He seemed as if he had no children and a wife. So, what is the beauty here? He says he seemed as if he had he had lots and lots of grandchildren. He had lots and lots of grandchildren, no children or a wife. He seemed to have lots and lots of grandchildren. This was a kind of man, this was the sort of man he looked like. So, how does the author portray his grandmother? How does the author portray his grandmother? The grandmother, you see, the grandmother is actually she is the principal character here. Grandmother is the linchpin here. Grandmother is the principal character, the most important character, the cardinal character here in this text. And in the whole story we find there is a description of the grandmother, and the grandmother, he says, how does the author portray his grandmother? So far as the physical appearance of the grandmother is concerned, we come to know that he writes about the grandmother in a very beautiful way. He says the grandmother's face was full of wrinkles. The wrinkles ran from everywhere to everywhere on her face. It was a crisscross of wrinkles, and there were wrinkles on her face. She looked, and she was old, fat, short, and she put her one hand on her waist in order to balance the stoop, and on the other hand she told the beads of the rosary. So, from this we come to know that she was a religious minded woman, and the lady she believed in the old values. Why does he say? The thought was almost revolting. The thought was almost revolting because the writer, Kushan Singh did not believe that the lady was old. She was not only pretty, she was not only young, she was very beautiful, and she was very beautiful. The grandfather had a divine beauty, and the grandmother was really pretty, beautiful, young, and actually people said that she was once young and beautiful, but actually she was very beautiful. This is what the writer says, and squarely speaking, that the writer believed in the fact that the lady was very beautiful and the grandmother was really very culturally polished, and that is very important part of our system. This is very important part of our country. That is all. Thank you very much.